I died on a Tuesday. Not literally, though there were moments when I wished it had been that simple, that final. No, I died the way most women do, quietly in pieces while everyone around me went on eating breakfast and complaining about traffic. I died in the space between I'm fine and the truth. I died in a marriage that looked perfect in photographs. My name is Clara, and this is the story of how I buried myself alive, and how I clawed my way back to the surface with dirt still under my fingernails. It started the way these things always do, with love, or what I mistook for it. I met Daniel when I was 26, working at a small art gallery in Portland. He came in on a rainy Thursday afternoon, the kind of rain that turns the whole city silver and makes you want to curl up with someone who knows your secrets. He stood in front of a painting and admiring for weeks, a woman's face, half in shadow, half in light. And he said, "She looks like she's deciding whether to stay or go." I remember thinking, this man sees things. What I didn't realize then was that he saw things the way he wanted to see them. And soon he would look at me the same way, like I was a painting he could interpret however he pleased, a story he could rewrite. We were engaged within a year. Married 6 months after that. Everyone said we were perfect together. His mother called me her answered prayer. My friends posted our wedding photos with captions about relationship goals. And I believed it too, at first. I believed in the white dress, the promises, the idea that love was supposed to feel like being chosen. But no one tells you that being chosen can feel like being owned. The first time Daniel raised his voice at me, we'd been married for 8 months. We were in the kitchen of our new apartment, the one we'd painted together on weekends, laughing over cheap wine and arguing about whether the living room should be agreeable grey or accessible beige. I'd made dinner, something I did every night because he worked long hours at the firm and came home exhausted. That night, I tried a new recipe. Thai curry. I'd been excited about it. He took one bite and pushed the plate away. "What is this?" I blinked. "Curry. I thought we could try something different." "I hate curry, Clara. You know that." I didn't know that. You never said, "I shouldn't have to say it. You should just know." The words hung in the smoke. My hands started to shake. I don't know why. It was such a small thing, wasn't it? Just dinner. Just a preference. But something in his voice, something in the way he looked at me like I'd failed a test I didn't know I was taking, it made me feel small. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'll make something else." He sighed, the kind of sigh that said, "You're so much work. Don't bother. I'll just order something." He left the kitchen. I stood there with the rejected plate in my hands, and I did what I would do 1,000 times after that. I blamed myself. I should have asked. I should have remembered. I should have been better. I didn't realize then that I was learning to apologize for existing. It's strange how slowly you can disappear, not all at once, not in some dramatic moment, just gradually, like a photograph left in the sun, the colours fading so slowly you don't notice until one day you look at it and can't recognise the person in the frame. Daniel didn't hit me. I want to be clear about that because I know what you're thinking. There were no bruises, no broken bones, no police reports. And for the longest time I told myself that meant it wasn't abuse. That word abuse felt too big, too serious for what was happening to me. Abuse was what happened to other women, women in movies, women in shelters, not women like me with college degrees and careers and Instagram accounts full of smiling couples. But Daniel had other ways of breaking me. He criticised the way I dressed. That makes you look bigger than you are. The way I talked, you're embarrassing me in front of my colleagues. The friends I kept, she's a bad influence on you. The dreams I had, you're not talented enough to be a real artist, Clara. It's a hobby, not a career. Each comment was small. Individually, they could be explained away. He was just being honest. He was just trying to help. He was just having a bad day. But together, over months and years, they formed a prison. I stopped wearing the clothes I loved, stopped seeing my friends, stopped painting, the one thing that had always made me feel like myself. I made myself smaller and smaller, thinking that if I could just be perfect enough, quiet enough, invisible enough, he would love me the way he had in the beginning. But the thing about disappearing for someone else is that they don't notice. They just get used to your absence. The worst part wasn't the criticism, it was the unpredictability. Some days Daniel would come home and be the man I'd fallen in love with. He'd bring me flowers, daisies, my favourite. He'd pull me into his arms and say, "I don't know what I'd do without you." He'd kiss my forehead and make me laugh with stupid jokes. And for those moments, those brief, shining moments, I'd think, see, he loves me. It's going to be okay. And then the next day, he'd tell me I was stupid for forgetting to pick up his dry cleaning. That's the thing about emotional abuse that no one talks about. The good moments make you doubt the bad ones. You start to think, maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I'm too sensitive. Maybe he's right. Maybe I am the problem. I started keeping a journal, hidden in a box under the bed. At first, I wrote to remember the good days, to remind myself why I stayed. But slowly, without meaning to, I started documenting the bad ones too. February 12th, he said I was useless because I couldn't find his keys. They were in his jacket pocket. March 3rd, he called me selfish for wanting to visit my parents. April 19, he told me no one else would ever love me, that I should be grateful he puts up with me. Reading back through those entries now, I can see it so clearly. But at the time, I couldn't. I was too deep inside it, like trying to read a book when your face is pressed against the page. I think I knew I had to leave the day I stopped recognizing myself in the mirror. It was a Saturday morning. Daniel was at the gym. I was standing in our bathroom, brushing my teeth, and I caught my own reflection. For a second, just a second, I didn't know who I was looking at. The woman in the mirror had my face, but her eyes were hollow. Her shoulders were hunched, like she was trying to take up less space. Her expression was nothing, just blank, empty. I thought, when did I start looking like this? And then quieter, when did I start being like this? I gripped the edge of the sink. My hands were shaking again. They did that a lot now. And I made myself ask the question I'd been avoiding for 3 years. What am I doing? What was I doing in this marriage? What was I doing in this life? What was I doing to myself? The answer came in a whisper from some part of me that was still alive, buried deep. You're dying, Clara. You're dying and you're calling it love. Leaving wasn't dramatic. There was no big confrontation, no screaming match, no thrown objects. Those things happen in movies. In real life, leaving is quieter, sadder, more mundane. I planned it carefully. I had to. Daniel controlled our finances. It's easier if I handle the bills, babe. So I didn't have access to much money. I started saving whatever I could. A 20 here, a 50 there. Cash I told him I'd spent on groceries or gas. It took me 4 months to save enough for a deposit on a tiny studio apartment across town. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. Not my parents. They loved Daniel, thought he was such a good provider. Not my old friends. I hadn't talked to them in over a year. I was completely alone and I was terrified. But I was more terrified of staying. I chose a day when I knew he'd be gone all afternoon. A golf thing with clients. I called in sick to work, and as soon as his car pulled out of the driveway, I started packing. I didn't take much. Some clothes, a few books, the hidden box with my journal. I left behind the furniture, the dishes, the life we'd built. I left behind the woman I'd been trying to be, the perfect wife, the grateful one, the one who never asked for too much. I left a note on the kitchen table. It said, "I need to figure out who I am. Please don't come looking for me." And then I walked out of that apartment with 2 suitcases and a broken heart, and I didn't look back. The first night in my new place, I sat on the floor and cried, not because I missed him. The part of me did. The part that had loved him. The part that still remembered the daisies and the gentle moments, but because I was free. Free and absolutely terrified. Who was I without him? I'd spent 3 years moulding myself to fit his expectations, cutting off pieces of myself to make him happy. I didn't know how to exist on my own anymore. I didn't know what I liked, what I wanted, what I believed. I'd forgotten the sound of my own voice. That night, in that empty studio with no furniture and no curtains, I made myself a promise. I would figure it out. I would find the parts of myself I'd buried. I would learn to be Clara again. Not Daniel's Clara, not anyone's Clara. Just me. It was the scariest promise I'd ever made. Healing isn't a straight line. Everyone tells you that, but you don't really understand it until you're in it. Some days I felt strong. I'd wake up in my tiny studio, make coffee in the cheap pot I'd bought at a thrift store and think, I did it. I got out. I'd feel proud, invincible even. I'd paint for hours, something I hadn't done in years. And I'd remember what it felt like to create something just for myself. Other days I'd collapse. I'd lie in bed at 2 in the afternoon, unable to move, drowning in doubt. But what if he was right about me? What if I was useless, stupid, unlovable? What if leaving was the biggest mistake of my life? What if no one else ever wanted me? Those were the days when I'd reach for my phone, wanting to call him, wanting to go back. Not because I loved him. I knew by then that what I'd felt wasn't love, not really. But because familiar pain is easier than unfamiliar freedom. I never called. Instead, I went to therapy. It took me 2 months to work up the courage to make the appointment. I sat in the waiting room, hands shaking, wondering if I was being dramatic, wondering if the therapist would laugh at me and say, "You think that's abuse? Let me tell you about real suffering." But she didn't. Her name was Dr. Reeves, and she had kind eyes and grey hair pulled back in a bun. When I told her my story, halting, apologising every few sentences, she didn't interrupt. She just listened. And when I was done, she said something that changed everything. "Clara, you've been in survival mode for years. It's going to take time to feel safe in your own body again, but you will. I promise you will." I cried so hard I couldn't breathe. Daniel didn't make it easy. He called, texted, showed up at the gallery where I worked. At first he was angry. "How could you do this to me, to us?" Then he was pleading, "I love you. I'll change. Please come back." Then angry again. "You're making a huge mistake. You'll regret this." I blocked his number, got a restraining order when he wouldn't stop, changed my routine so he couldn't predict where I'd be. And slowly, so slowly, his presence in my life faded, but his voice stayed. The things he'd said about me, they'd burrowed deep. They'd become the way I talked to myself. "You're not good enough. You're too much. You're not enough. No one will ever really love you." Unlearning those voices, that was the hardest part. Harder than leaving. Harder than the paperwork and the restraining order and the nights I spent jumping at every sound. Because those voices were inside me now. They were the way I saw myself. Dr. Reeves gave me homework. Every morning, look in the mirror and say one kind thing to yourself. It felt ridiculous at first. I'd stand in my bathroom staring at my reflection and try to find something, anything kind to say. Most days I couldn't. I'd just stare, silent, hating what I saw. But I kept trying. And one morning, about 6 months after I'd left, I looked in the mirror and said, "You were brave." Just that. 3 words. But I meant them. I started painting again. Really painting, not just doodling in a sketchbook, but setting up an easel in my apartment and losing hours to canvas and colour. I painted myself over different versions. The woman I'd been in my marriage, small, faded, barely there. The woman I was now, cracked but still standing. The woman I wanted to become, whole, bright, unapologetically alive. One painting in particular consumed me. It was a self-portrait, but abstract, my face emerging from darkness, surrounded by flowers, lilies, roses, daisies. But the flowers weren't growing from soil. They were growing from wounds, from the cracks in my skin, from the broken places. I called it the woman who learned to leave flowers at her own grave. Because that's what I was doing, wasn't it? I was mourning the person I'd been. The person Daniel had wanted me to be. The version of myself I'd killed in order to survive. I was standing at that grave, placing flowers, saying goodbye, but I wasn't staying there. I was walking away. A year after I left, my brother got married. I almost didn't go. The thought of seeing my family, of seeing Daniel's family, because our families were intertwined, had been friends for years, made me physically ill. But my brother Sam had always been good to me, and I didn't want Daniel to take that from me too. So I went. I wore a dress I'd bought specifically for the occasion. Red. Bright. Defiant red. The kind of dress Daniel would have told me made me look like I was trying too hard. I wore it anyway. I wore heels that made me tall. I did my makeup the way I wanted, bold lips and all. I walked into that wedding feeling like a warrior. And then I saw him. Daniel was there. Of course he was. His younger sister was friends with my sister-in-law. He was standing near the bar, looking exactly the same, handsome, charming, laughing at someone's joke. For a moment, my body betrayed me. My hands started shaking, my breath caught. All the old fear came rushing back. But then something shifted. I looked at him, really looked at him, and I realised He didn't have power over me anymore. He was just a man who had hurt me, yes, a man who had tried to break me. But I was still here. I was still standing. And he was just a man. I didn't approach him, didn't make a scene. I just turned away and walked to the other side of the room where my cousin was waving me over. And I spent the rest of the night dancing, laughing, being present. I didn't think about him once. It's been 3 years since I left. 3 years, and I barely recognise the person I was in that marriage. Sometimes I look back at old photos, the ones where I'm smiling next to Daniel, looking happy, and I want to reach through the frame and shake that woman. You deserve so much more than this. Please, please wake up. But I also have compassion for her now, for the woman I was, because she was doing the best she could with what she knew. She was trying to survive. And ultimately she did. She got us out. My life now is small, quiet, unremarkable in all the best ways. I have my studio apartment, which I've filled with plants, paintings and books. I have a few close friends, real friends, the kind who know my story and love me anyway. I have my art, which I sell occasionally at local markets and galleries. I'm not famous, I'm not rich, I'm not living some glamorous life, but I'm free. I wake up every morning and get to decide who I am, what I wear, what I eat, how I spend my time. I get to take up space. I get to be loud or quiet or messy or put together, and I don't have to apologise for any of it. I get to be a person again. There's a moment I think about often. It was about 2 years after I left. I was in a coffee shop, working on a sketch. A woman sat down at the table next to mine. She was young, maybe 24, 25. She was on the phone, and I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but I couldn't help overhearing. I know he didn't mean it. He's just stressed. No, I'm not making excuses. I just think if I try harder, if I'm better about not making him angry. My pencil stopped moving. I knew that voice. Not her voice, but the tone of it. The desperate, pleading quality, the way she was trying to convince herself, convince whoever she was talking to that everything was fine. I knew that voice because it used to be mine. I wanted so badly to lean over and say something, to tell her, that's not love. That's not what you deserve. You can leave. It will be hard, but you can do it. But I didn't, because I remembered being her. I remembered the well-meaning people who tried to tell me to leave and how I defended him, defended us. I remembered that I couldn't hear it until I was ready. So instead, I just caught her eye when she hung up the phone, and I smiled. A small, understanding smile. The kind that says, I see you, and when you're ready, you'll see it too. She smiled back, confused but polite. And I went back to my sketch, but I left a card on her table when I left. Just a simple card with a number for a domestic violence hotline, and a note if you ever need this. No judgment, just help. I don't know if she called, I don't know if she got out, but I left that card there like a seed, hoping it might bloom someday. Last week I went back to that gallery where I first met Daniel. I hadn't been there in years, couldn't bear it, too many memories. But I've been working on a new series of paintings, the Grave Flowers series, I call it, and the gallery owner reached out asking if I'd be interested in showing my work. I said yes. Setting up the exhibition was surreal. I hung each painting carefully, arranging them in the order I'd painted them. The darkness first, then the emergence, then the blooming. A visual journey from death to life. The painting that started it all, the self-portrait with flowers growing from wounds, I saved for last. I hung it in the centre of the room, right where that painting of the woman, half in shadow, half in light, used to be. The painting Daniel had stood in front of that first day. And I thought she was deciding whether to stay or go, and I decided to go. The opening night was small, a few dozen people, mostly friends and other local artists. But as I stood there, watching strangers look at my paintings, reading my pain and my healing on those canvases, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Pride. Not pride in being strong or in surviving or in getting out. Just pride in being myself, in existing, in taking up space in the world without apologising for it. Near the end of the night, a woman approached me. She was older, maybe in her 60s, with silver hair and paint under her fingernails. "These are extraordinary," she said. "I can feel the journey in them, the resurrection." "Thank you," I said. That's exactly what it was. She looked at me for a long moment, and then she said something I'll never forget. "Not everyone makes it out, you know." Not everyone comes back. You should be very, very proud. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. She squeezed my hand and walked away. And I stood there in that gallery, surrounded by my paintings, surrounded by my story, and I let myself feel it. The weight of what I'd survived, yes, but also the lightness of what I'd become. Here's what I wish someone had told me when I was in that marriage, when I was disappearing. You are not too much. You are not too sensitive, too needy, too difficult, too anything. You are not the problem. You were never the problem. The person who makes you feel like you have to shrink, they are the problem. Love shouldn't make you smaller. Real love makes you more yourself, not less. Real love doesn't ask you to apologize for breathing. Real love doesn't keep score or make you feel like you're constantly failing. I know it's hard to see when you're in it. I know you're tired. I know you're scared. I know you've invested so much time, energy, hope, and leaving feels like admitting defeat. But staying in something that's killing you isn't strength. It's not loyalty. It's not love. Leaving is the brave thing, even when it doesn't feel brave, even when it feels like the scariest thing you've ever done, even when you have to do it with shaking hands and an uncertain future. You deserve to exist without permission. You deserve to take up space. You deserve softness and kindness and respect, not as a reward for being perfect, but as a baseline, as the bare minimum. And if you're not getting that, you're allowed to leave. You're allowed to save yourself. I still have hard days when the doubt creeps back in, days when I wonder if I'm really healed or if I'm just pretending, days when I catch myself apologizing for nothing, making myself small out of habit. But those days are getting fewer, and I'm getting better at recognizing them, at being gentle with myself when they come. I've learned that healing isn't about becoming someone new. It's about finding your way back to who you were before the world told you to be different. It's about excavating yourself from the rubble. I've learned that you can be broken and whole at the same time. That scars are just proof you survived. That the cracks are where the light gets in and where the flowers grow. I've learned that leaving flowers at your own grave isn't morbid. It's how you honor what you've been through. It's how you say, that version of me is gone, but I'm grateful for what she taught me. I'm grateful she kept us alive long enough to get here. And then you walk away. You leave those flowers behind and you go build a life. I don't know what happens next in my story. I don't know if I'll fall in love again. Real love this time, the kind that feels like coming home instead of disappearing. I don't know if my art will ever be more than a small thing I do for myself. I don't know if I'll always live alone in this little studio or if someday I'll have a bigger space, maybe even a house. I don't know. But here's what I do know. I'll be okay. Not because I'm particularly strong or special or brave, but because I've already survived the thing I thought would destroy me. I've already walked through the fire. And if I can do that, if I can leave everything familiar, rebuild myself from nothing, learn to exist in the world again, I can do anything. So can you. If you're reading this, if you're listening to this story and seeing yourself in it, please know you're not alone. You're not crazy. Your feelings are valid. Your pain is real, and you deserve better. You deserve to live a life that doesn't require you to disappear. You deserve flowers, not at your grave, at your table, in your hair, in your hands. You deserve to bloom. Thank you for listening to my story. For sitting with me in this quiet space and letting me share something so personal, so raw. These stories, they're not easy to tell, but they're important because somewhere out there, someone needs to hear them. Someone needs to know they're not alone. If this story touched something in your heart, if it reminded you of your own journey or gave you courage for a step you need to take, I'd be honoured if you'd leave a small whisper in the comments below. You don't have to share your whole story if you're not ready. Just a word, a thought, a feeling. I read every single one and they remind me why I do this. And if you'd like to walk with me through more stories like this, stories about being human, being broken, being brave, just stay close. Subscribe. Let's keep each other company in the quiet moments. Until next time, this is Olivia, whispering to your heart. You are not alone. You were never alone. And you are so much stronger than you know.